Hi everyone, Simon Jacobson here, and I'm really excited and delighted to have a very special guest, who's also a special friend. I'll introduce to you Michal Oshman. Some of you may know of her spreading popularity, her new book, What Would You Do If You Weren't Afraid? And I met Michal 7 years ago. And to me, it's always exciting to share spiritual journeys that each of us take, the twists and turns, the ups and downs. And we intersected. And I thought it would really be great for myself, for Michal, for all of you, to hear about some of this cross-pollination, and above all, to empower each one of us in our journey. You know, we all have our challenges, we have our difficulties, we have our good moments, we have our challenging moments. And Michal has been an inspiration to me and to so many, because when you hear real life situations, someone dealing with the different confrontations and interactions in a very honest and sincere way, it's just extremely empowering and encouraging. So let me introduce Michal formally. I met Michal when she was working at Facebook. She was then responsible for international leadership and team development at Facebook. Michal presently is head of company culture, diversity, and inclusion. Yeah, that's a mouthful. And employer branding at TikTok Europe. And throughout her career, Michal has trained and coached hundreds of tech leaders. She has 3 university degrees in psychodynamic and systemic thinking, sociology, and anthropology. Michal lives with her husband and their 4 children in London, UK. She practices Hasidic Judaism. I'm intimidated a bit by all these titles, but we'll get over it. So my distinct pleasure to welcome you, Michal. How are you?
Oh, this is a moment for sure. And as you said, we've known each other for a while. And I remember the first time I reached out to you, I obviously read your book, Towards a Meaningful Life, that did change my life for the best, for the better. I learned so much from the book. And I had this need, which I'm sure that tens of thousands of people have, to reach out to you and to tell you how it affected me. And I actually made a short video of myself talking about the book and kind of asking, is there any chance I can speak with you? And I remember I used my contacts, a friend of a friend, to get the video, the short video to you. And I didn't expect anything, of course. It's one of those things, like a little bit of a groupie, behavior. And then my contact said, he's going to speak to you. And I was really pleased and very humbled. And you did obviously find time to speak with me, because I had to tell you how important your book was to me, and knowing that it was important to so many other people. I was very early on my journey. I was 38 years old there back then, and I discovered a Jewish wisdom, and I wanted to learn it, but I had to learn it in a certain way that was able, in a certain way that I could, I guess, adjusted to where I was in life back then, and your book enabled that as well as today. So yes, it's very special to be here with you today.
Yeah, can I say I'm deeply moved. I'm always humbled when I hear these words, because I see all the wisdom that I convey, or for that matter, any true wisdom. We're only a link in a chain. We're channeling that which came before us. But there's an expression in the Talmud that says, the wine belongs to the master, but you say thank you to the waiter who delivers it. So I guess we're all waiters. And it's very, yeah, well, here we are. So, since you already mentioned, where were you in your life at that point? Like, what was going on? I think it's a good way to just get a little background of your own life situation back 38, you said you were 38 years old.
Yes. So my life, well, we all have our unique journeys now, I know. And I was brought up in Israel, in Tel Aviv. to, well, I don't want to say secular, but Jewish family that doesn't practice much Judaism from the point of view of Shabbat or Kiddush or lighting candles. We lived a Jewish life in the way that we knew what it meant, which is just appreciating and knowing that we're Jewish. And I had no idea that Judaism carries so much spirituality and meaning and all the beauty that Judaism carries in our wisdom. And for many, many years, I suffered for different reasons, I guess, and I write about this in the book. I suffered from anxiety and from other mental health challenges, and I found life really challenging and really hard. I was sad. I was struggling inside. I was fearful, but at the same time, I was highly productive, I would say, or functional. So no one knew what was going on in my internal world, because, as you said, from the outside, I managed to get all these achievements, all these things that I can write on my LinkedIn, or really beautiful things that I enjoyed in life. I just wasn't able to see how beautiful they were. And I reached a point after going to therapy for about 15 years and taking medication, when I got to a point when I felt truly stuck. And I knew that the answers to my internal struggle, I had a feeling it's not going to come from the therapy room. I felt that the therapeutic kind of experience took me as far as it could, until I discovered Chassidut, until I discovered Jewish wisdom, and until I discovered Tanya, and until I connected with the community around me that helped me learn about these beautiful principles in the Jewish wisdom, and that was a turning point in my mental health and well-being journey.
You were living where then at the time?
I was living at that point. I was living in London, and so I already had 3 children. Today, thank God, I have 4. So I had so much to celebrate, and also I was financially stable. I had good jobs, but inside, I was not doing well at all.
So what was your first exposure to Jewish wisdom or Chassidut? How did that come about?
So after trying many things, I was quite desperate. But when I mean desperate, I was, as I said, I was living. I was okay on the surface, but inside I was asking myself the questions. Am I always going to feel so anxious? Is every day going to feel like the last day of my life, or God forbid, the people close to me? Every moment felt like a potential tragedy. And mostly I put that on I guess I blamed my upbringing and different things that I had seen at home. At that point, I had no idea I had a soul. I thought I was only a body. I thought that I'm only what has been kind of done to me, or things that I had seen. I had no idea that there was a part of me that maybe I haven't accessed yet, or a pure part in me that would give me a lot of hope. So there was one Saturday morning, and at that part I was calling it Saturday and not Shabbat, when I felt very anxious and even concerned from some thoughts that I had, and I went to Google. And I Googled a few words like anxiety and fear and probably depression, but I also Googled joy and happiness. And for some reason, I Googled Judaism. And of course, everything happens for a reason. And in the search results came up a name of a lady, a doctor of psychology, Dr. Katie Lowenthal. And I just decided I'm going to email her. I emailed her probably on Saturday morning, which she would never check her emails. Later, I would discover. But later on Sunday, she replied to me and she said, let's talk. Because the email said, my name is Michal. I seem to have everything, but I feel like I have nothing. Something's wrong. So it happened to be that she lived only 30 minutes away from me. We met in a coffee shop. And I started telling her about my fear of aging and not being relevant. And I remember saying to her, I came back from a Beyonce concert, and she said, I don't know what you're talking about, aging. You look lovely to me. And who is Beyonce? And what is Botox? And all of those things that I was just like, and she said, well, I want to suggest something to you. It's going to sound very alien and very different, but maybe you should take a leap of faith. And then she suggested that I start learning the Tanya, which at that point meant nothing to me. It's the first time I heard the name of Tanya, but I took the leap of faith and I went to a shiur, to a class a few days after.
Amazing. I mean, I hope you don't mind me asking this question. Two questions, actually. It's a double question. Did you, in your years growing up, did you ever have anti-religious sentiments, any resistance as it being irrelevant, or negative experiences with religious people, with Judaism? That's the first part of the question. The second part, which is the second half, with all your education and academics, you never heard about a soul before? I mean, sociology, anthropology, you're clearly a very intelligent woman. Just thinking about how did you, because in many ways, you're really reflective of so many secular people out there that can be very educated. I just wanted to capture.
Yes. I've never been asked these two questions. I'm already even enjoying this more. So to answer the first question, I grew up in a home with a lot of respect to the dat, to religion. Before the Holocaust, my grandparents kept Shabbat, kept kashrut, but something happened, I guess, after the Holocaust that it didn't continue to my parents' generation. So it was more stories, but I don't think I saw like Shabbat candles being lit in my house. But it wasn't resentment. It was more not part of who we are. And then going to your question about how did I not know? I mean, I'm educated. How did I not know about the soul? I think that I was educated very much on kind of Freudian psychological upbringing, education, which, and we can argue about this forever. I have a love-hate relationship with Sigmund Freud, but Sigmund Freud didn't acknowledge the fact, maybe in his very, very late days, that there is something that is spiritual or a soul, but most of his writing is about that you're not being rational if you're suggesting something like that. And my father was also the head forensic pathologist of Israel for many years, and he conducted autopsies on 40,000 bodies. And I vividly remember asking him, Rabbi Jacobson, when I felt that there was something in addition to the body, because I did see difficult sides in my upbringing. My parents did the best that they could, but I did see death from a very young age. And I asked him, Abba, Daddy, is there any small body in the bigger body that doesn't die? And he said, no, we're only flesh. So I do think that at some point in my life, I had this sense that there's something because I remember thinking, how is it possible that all the love that I feel for my grandparents when my body ends, and I understood from a very early day that the body ends at some point, how is it possible that all those feelings don't continue? But there was no one there to have that conversation with me. So yes, there's a word in Hebrew. I mean, obviously, neshama is Hebrew for soul. And it's very kind of a slang word in Hebrew to say neshama, like, my friend, my sister. But I didn't associate that with me. I had no idea that as human, as a Jew, I really have a neshama.
Interesting. The reason I ask these questions, I'll tell you why, Michal, because firstly, knowing you personally, obviously I'm personally intrigued, but also I've been hearing from people who've been reading your book, What Would You Do If You Weren't Afraid? And many of them comment and say, well, she's just like me. I have so many things in common with Michal. Like when I wrote my Torah Meaningful Life, I wrote it as a scholar, as a person who was a student of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the teachings. I try to identify with people because I really feel communication is only possible when we're understand each other and no one's on a pedestal. But your experiences, especially the way you express them in a very raw and I would say vulnerable way, resonates with people. There's something about that sincerity. People don't feel you're talking to them and talking down to them. You're really talking about your own heart-wrenching experiences. That's why I ask those questions, because frankly, most people in the world today, very similar experience regarding soul. Either it's some academic idea very hardly will you find people say it's really relevant to me, especially academics. You mentioned Freudian. I mean, I was immediately intrigued by saying you never heard of Jungian psychology, or Frankl, where they talk a little more spiritual and so on. But still, the prevalent view in the Western world, for sure, is very anti-soul and very anti-spiritual. And as you said, everything is physical. Your father, a doctor, it's flesh, flesh, flesh. And that's why I was very intrigued to hear as well. Well, you're also lucky that you didn't have any negative sentiments. Many people have a problem, because I could speak from my own experience, that there's a resistance because religion was either completely irrelevant or even had a negative taste. Like many people tell me, religion is about dogma, about punishment. It's not about free thinking, about free open, free spiritedness and so on. So that's why I wanted to put it into that context, because really, at the end of the day, what you've done with the book and in general is not just you found your answers, you've really shared. So I was going to ask you, the next question was going to be a first comment, obviously, what I said, but my next question was going to be, so what pushed you to do not just to take care of your own needs, so to speak, spiritual needs, but really turn it into a book, which becomes essentially opening your life to the world?
Yes, and it's not easy to open your life to the world. And it's not something I planned on doing. Even though I've been working for social media companies for years, and like Facebook and TikTok, and very used to people sharing their lives and their personal experiences, I've never really shared much about my life, apart from maybe like a picture of my kids in a summer camp or something like that. But exactly as you said, at the moment that I realized that there's this treasure that I discovered, and it's 1,000 years treasure, and I felt like not people don't know about this. And when I say people, as Jews and Israelis and non-Jews and anyone and everyone, I had this this fire inside of me to find the words to share this with the world. And I don't call myself like, it's funny when people say author. I just had a story to share. And that story is discovering, this wisdom and how I apply it to make my life better and my family life better, and also my business life better. Because these principles, these deep, spiritual, holy principles, I apply in my marriage, in the way that I raise my children, in the way that I bring myself to work as a leader or as a coach. And I realized I don't have to change personas. I can be exactly the same person, feel connected to myself, know why I wake up in the morning, and most days know what I'm here to do on a most good days. And that is something that I just had to share with the world. I deliberately wrote this book for anyone and everyone. It's a self-help book. I don't think it's a religious book. I share it, the guy that broke up with me, and how it feels to have a broken heart, how to deal with disappointment, with failure, with setback, with not feeling good enough. So all those feelings that we all feel, some often, some more, some less often. I just wanted to share, I guess, a way to deal with it that is not very known to the world.
Well, it's beautiful. I guess it's also part of your own spiritual journey, is to share, not just to be self-contained in that sense. And I mean, the credibility that you offer is saying, hey, okay, I'm coming from this world, and here's what I've learned. So if I may ask you, so you don't experience fear anymore since you reached this?
Of course I do. I share in the book a very special moment, when I actually went to speak with a life coach, kind of like a life career coach. And he was very aware of my anxiety. And Rabbi Jacobson, like we all experience, fear and anxiety. And actually, it's a way to survive life, right? Like if a lion is chasing you, you should be fearful.
Right.
And obviously these last year and a half, they've challenged us in so many, and you wrote about this and you spoke about this in the last year and a half, when we all feared new fears and old fears, but we felt it in such a big way. When I speak about anxiety in the book, I mean this constant feeling of losing control, of something horrible is going to happen. If I call my mother and she doesn't answer, the assumption is, she was in a car crash. If my kids are asking to go on a school trip, my instinct is to say no, because I will be, approving to them to go to something that's going to end in a really bad way. It's the anxiety that doesn't allow you to really live life. So have I overcome it completely? Do I live completely a fearless life? Of course not. I don't think that's possible. But what I do know now is that I'm not in full control. That there is a power and something that is much greater than me, that I can do my best. But I can't control fully aging, and I can't control fully how people will feel about me. And even if I have the best of intent, some things could happen and it will go the wrong direction. So by knowing that I actually control as much as I can, but beyond that I can't, that reduces the amount of the anxiety. And also that my anxiety, or this thing that I have inside of me, it also has good things if I know how to channel them in a positive way. So this is a shift, this is a mind shift that was never applied in the therapy room. But when you learn about Chassidut, you understand that sometimes anxiety is a way of the soul to say, hey, you're not living the life that you were supposed to live. You're not fulfilling yourself. So this anxiety is a signal for something else going on much deeper. Not always, and I'm not a therapist, but I think it worked for me to look at things in a different way.
Yeah, that's very powerful. So what do you say to someone, let's say, listening to this, but is skeptical, not skeptical about you or skeptical about the ideas, but they're skeptical about themselves? They're living in a lot of fear, a lot of inhibition, being criticized. Today we live in a crisis of self-esteem. You write about it in the book. And people really are paralyzed. They may be successful on the outside, as you pointed out, but internally, they don't feel they're living life to the fullest, because there's a lot of the insecurities and fears, especially in this climate of uncertainty. And how do you even begin? I mean, you were blessed. You clearly were blessed. You were in a moment of desperation, as you pointed out, but you reached and you called. There was clearly a light, a spark. But there are a lot of people, I mean, I hear this all the time. They feel, I can't get out of my quagmire, out of my pit, that dark place I'm in. What do you say to someone like that, if I may?
No, of course. Listen, I can share what I would say. I'd love to hear what you say as well, for the benefit of everyone listening, because I'm much more earlier on the journey. I think I would say what was told to me, that a very little bit of light dispels a lot of darkness. And I think that one of the first things is to actually reconnect to yourself. I know it's easier said than done. But I also think that for these moments, you need to give everything you have to, first of all, remind yourself that you have a soul. And your soul is here. The day you were born, that I love when you say that. The day you were born was the day that the world was missing you. Remind ourselves, even in the hardest of times, I am here for a reason. If I'm having challenges in my marriage, if one of my children is needing more support, or I'm not sure I'm being the best mom for them, if I just got laid off of work, if I'm struggling with my relationship with my parents, we have to remind ourselves that we're here for a reason. Maybe we can't see it every single day or week or moment, but I think reminding ourselves that nothing is by chance, and we're here because we should be here, and we have a role to play, I guess, is the first place. I know this recording will be shared, I guess, in a couple of weeks, and then continue to run. But we are not far from Elul and Rosh Hashanah. And one of the meaningful moments that I had, and sorry to throw this back at you, Rabbi Jacobson, is to actually use your guide of the 60 days. Because one of the things that is helpful is taking day by day. I think that sometimes people want to repair their lives and often will treat it as a diet. I want to lose this and this amount of weight. I want to change completely. But, a good, healthy journey is a longer journey. It takes time. And with the book that I've used for now 6 years of the 60 days preparation for the high holidays, and within the high holidays, people can take step by step. And every step asked a different kind of question, or a set of questions, to help ourselves return to ourselves, So I don't believe in trying to do like the big jump just in a one go. What is that one baby step that you can do to remind yourself that you're here to a reason? And who can you speak with? Who is that one person that you trust? I really believe in friendships. I really believe in that person that you trust and you can open your soul and heart and mind to. So just to, in a very long way, I just said, take it step by step, find the person that you trust, and yes, educate yourself. Because often we just don't know what's inside of us, so we don't know what we're looking for. So we look outside. But if we can start looking inside, then there's lots of treasures that we're each going to find.
Well said. I mean, I don't have much to add. I would second all of that. I would say a few points that maybe I would emphasize. The last point you made about friendship can't be overstated. There's an expression in the Talmud that someone who's tied up or someone in a pit can't free themselves. You need someone else to help untie you. So being around supportive people who validate you, who believe in you, is a tremendous asset in rebuilding confidence when a person is in a darker place. You don't have to do it alone. There are beautiful people. Essentially, love works and heals. I would also add, I've been thinking lately a lot about and speaking about just like a human body, sometimes, when it's weary or drained, you just have to go into a bath and languish in a bath or in a spa. So I was thinking about the spiritual spa as SPA, as study, prayer, action, which nice. You talk about in your book as well. Essentially 3 pillars where you have cognitive, emotional, and behavioral conditioning, which is study. Every day, read something, study something, even for 5 minutes. Pray, exercise your emotional muscles, and act. Do a good act, a kind act, something charitable. If you create a regimen, just like you have a physical regimen in your diet, in your exercise, your hygiene, if you have a spiritual regimen, these feed your soul, even when you don't feel it, and slowly you become a stronger person. I would just throw that in. Yeah,
love that.
And look, you mentioned 60 days. I created that book out of a need. It wasn't just, it was the need because the high holidays have so much power and people weren't not aware of how can I access this power. And especially, as you said, a day-to-day process, which is really all about growth. Growth is always a journey and movement. I think another thing, people convince themselves that right now I'm stuck and that's it. There's no such thing as stuck. The seasons are changing. The summer turns into the autumn. Autumn turns into winter. Winter into spring. We're always going through changes. We can convince ourselves that we're just living in this frame. But life is a narrative and you're part of a journey. That alone gives hope. Because no matter where you are, there's always going to be movement. The problem is when we resist it or we don't allow the movement to control us. So instead of going with the flow, you're stopping the flow. And that's called, unfortunately, that's called the opposite of life. Life is all about a flow, a rhythm, a pulsating energy. I would add one more thing since we're talking about this. I think also finding something you're good at. It could be a hobby, being with people, anything that you enjoy that you can say at the end of the day, no matter what's happened today, I accomplished one thing that I enjoyed. That type of, when you do things that are life-affirming, they breed more life-affirming. And I'm just responding since it's more of a conversation.
I connect to that, and I have to say one of the things that I discovered about the Jewish wisdom and the beautiful spiritual Jewish wisdom is that it's all about moving forward. And as you said, when I coach people, they often say, "I'm stuck. I don't know. There's no way out." And this sense of being stuck or being kind of stuck in your own life, it's frustrating. It's depressing. And often people don't take a step towards something is because they don't have reassurances. They don't have assurance that that step will lead them exactly to where they want. And then often people will freeze and not take a step because no one's promising them that the step will take them exactly to where they want. And one of the things that I found extremely inspiring about our story as a Jewish nation is that, and this is in my own words, is that when Hashem was auditioning, who was going to accept the Torah, and the other nations said, well, tell us exactly what it is, and what does it involve, et cetera, et cetera. and kind of the Israelites said, well, na'aseh v'nishma, right? We'll do it, and then we'll kind of we'll learn, we'll understand it more detail, we'll figure it out. But I love the spirit of doing, and I think often we don't do. And doing, as you said, doing could be that person that's pulling that other person from where they're stuck. It doesn't have to be only doing for your own stuckness. It could be helping someone get through what they're going through, and how much joy, can we get out of that? These are things that were discoveries for me. I, for example, didn't grow up on the concept of tzedakah, understanding how tzedakah, how giving to others is actually the right thing to do. It's not being kind of a nice person. Well, it is also, but it's just doing the right thing, caring for others, supporting others. And again, it was kind of a mind shift to understand that I'm also here to do good for others. It's part of the expectation. So all of those things combined together, I guess, really helped improve my mental health.
I'm sure you've heard this from others that are reacting to your book, but one of the things that resonated very much with me, here's a person, Michal Oshman, in the professional world, academically trained, up there, the cutting edge of social media, TikTok, prior to that, Facebook, these forces that are changing the world. And you did not feel the need to have to cut off your connections from this modern world to find your own spiritual self. Within that world, with all its challenges, you discovered. I think it has a tremendous lesson. There's so many people out there that are in the professional world. I was just talking to a whole people that just got out of MIT, computer science, and don't feel that they can really integrate these two worlds. It clashes for many. The drive for success. Like when you write in your book about how you were almost like enslaved to how others would look at you and what you consider to be value. Your image, your looks, your youth, what people say, and so on. To be able to be in that world and also have an identity that's transcendent is a tremendous lesson, because it's not like you're saying, quit your job and move to a mountain. How do you how would you sum that up? I know the whole book is about that, because you take every aspect of your challenge, but how would you sum it up as we're speaking, one-on-one here, and with all our good friends listening in?
I everything you said, yes. I don't see living Jewish spiritual life contradictory to also being a leader in a tech company. I see them complementing each other. I really don't see the clash or impossible to live them. From my own personal perspective, I think once I became clear of who I am, that was the first point, to get more clear about who I am and what matters to me and what's meaningful to me. Now, of course, these, like Rabbi Jacobson, if anything, there's these kind of comic moments when we're going on this big, beautiful offsite into this castle in Dublin, and I'm the only one that eats this weird food wrapped in a million levels of foil, and I make lots of noise, and I also forget to bring the cutlery from home, and then these moments that one could feel out of comfort zone. I think that's one of the beautiful things about, I guess, maturing, is that you can look at these things and smile, or at least make fun of them yourself, instead of feeling, out of comfort. But I won't say it. These are moments that if you don't, you can feel a bit, let's say, less confident. Or sometimes if you, let's say, miss a big company event, if it falls on a Jewish holiday. But because this is who I am, then it just makes everything a bit easier, because I just know, who I am and the things that I can and can't, or want or don't want to do. I daven in the morning, and then I go on a leadership meeting. It's how I live my life. I keep Shabbat and don't reply to emails 25 hours. And by the way, most of my friends at work want to adopt, a similar lifestyle. My husband was saying the other day, and both of us didn't grow up let's say, Dati religious, Baruch Hashem for Shabbat, because if not, we would completely lose our sanity. So I see a lot of the beautiful moments, and also, there may be a little bit of uncomfortable but more comic moments, and that's that's how we choose to raise our family.
You have in your book that powerful. I mean, it touched me deeply, and I would love to ask you about it. Just what were your feelings when your superior at Facebook had asked you something that completely surprised you, which I believe the words were like, "What matters to you? What do you really value?" You started realizing that there's an importance to you outside of others, and so on. What was that? If you don't mind sharing that moment.
Of course. And listen, Facebook as a workplace was very meaningful to me. First of all, the name of the book, What Would You Do If You Weren't Afraid? And I'll share it here, because if not, I'm not going to do it.
Lift it up a little higher. Lift it up a little higher. Yeah, there you go.
So this line, what would you do if you weren't afraid? When I started working for Facebook, it was now I guess 7-8 years ago. That was the big sign on top of the reception desk, and it was an invitation from the company to think beyond our fear, to be able to bring our creativity out and really challenge ourselves. What would we do if we weren't afraid? And in this case, Rabbi Jacobson, it's afraid of fear. It's afraid of it's afraid of failing. It's afraid of not getting things right. It's that kind of fear. So I joined the company, and really, it wasn't easy to get accepted. And as I sat down with my manager on the first day at work, I expected him to give me this list of things that he wants me to do, and like my goals. And, I was ready just to take the requests or the direction. And the first thing that he asked me, after making sure that he's pronouncing my name correctly, was, Michal, what do you care about? And I've never been asked this from a boss, a manager at work. And I think I was so surprised from the emotion and the empathy and the care in his question. So without even thinking, I said, I care about being Jewish. I care about being a mother. I care about being Israeli. And then, of course, I feared. I said, why did I have to share with him that I'm Jewish? Why did this come out of my mouth? And then he said very beautifully, I don't know much about Judaism. Tell me what it means, which opened the door for me to talk about specifically Shabbat, because my nervousness was about keeping Shabbat and finishing work early during the winter. And since then, every single Friday afternoon for 5 years, he sent me a message, Shabbat Shalom.
Wow. Beautiful. That tells you the things we fear most sometimes end up being the exact opposite. That's a powerful story. Since you mentioned the book, we've been talking about the book. The book, we have actually made it available now at our site, meaningfullife.com/shop. So I highly recommend the book. Go out and get it. It's obviously also anywhere, any good book is sold. And if I may ask you, Michal, so your husband went along the same journey with you? I don't want to pry into any personal matters, but was he like aligned or whatever you want to share? You don't have to share.
No. You and I like thinking. We like keeping things real, and I actually think it's a very important question, and I actually care deeply about answering it, I guess. So you could say, fell in love with the Tanya. I fell in love with Chassidut. I fell in love with this discovery. And it was initially all in my head. And I was reading a lot and educating myself. And at some point, I obviously brought it home from the classes that I went to. And my husband was inspired until it became actually these things that I kind of wanted to introduce to our family life. And that was the way and say it in Hebrew is like, you're changing the contract, right? He didn't marry. We met actually in Israel when I was working in a restaurant, and he was a customer, and it was a very non-kosher restaurant, to say the least. So, it's suddenly this whole, we were brought up in the same way, and suddenly I'm coming with these ideas. And that's one of the things I absolutely love about the Rebbe's teaching in Lubavitch, which is, the peace and the love and the support between the couple, the shlom bayit. is the most important thing. And every time when I felt like maybe I wanted to go a bit too fast, or maybe not aligning with my husband, which is a big mistake in my opinion, my girlfriends would always say, my friends that were supporting me, don't, where are you rushing? But I'm an achiever, so even when I get excited from a spiritual side, I want to go fast. But I learned how to pace myself, and I learned how to work closer with my husband about anything that we bring to the family life. And we were very, very honest with each other. One of the things I believe in deeply is communication, communication, communication. And I think I am blessed with being able to speak honestly and from the heart. And I think that could take a person in a marriage to good places. So yes, we've had some tensions, I won't lie. And a couple of times it felt very uncomfortable. But I think that we quite quickly course corrected and reminded ourselves what really matters, which is us bringing the family together always.
And overall, would you say it has enhanced your marriage and relationship, your family, children, husband, spouse, and so on?
Yes. So I think from a practical point of view, I'm obsessed about Shabbat. I don't know what the saying is exactly, Rabbi Jacobson, that like everyone has their own special mitzvah. I feel like Shabbat is something I care about deeply. I do wait for Shabbat, and when Shabbat's over, I'm upset to open my phone again. Maybe because I don't want to see all the emails there. But I think Shabbat really helps us within our marriage and our relationship to have some space to breathe and to actually connect. But yes, overall, it helped us make decisions. And listen, we did make big decisions. We changed schools. We moved from different schools to Jewish schools because it got to a point it was quite challenging to confuse the children. I think it also helped us share with the children who we are, especially since we don't live in Israel. We're both Israeli, but we're in Israel. I think identity is something that you almost consume from the air, right? It's special. At least in my opinion. I think when you live out of Israel, there's sometimes identity questions. And we felt that it really helped us tell our kids the story of where we came from and who we are and what they do with things later on. That's already beyond our control, I guess.
Well, beautiful to hear. I mean, I did ask the question very deliberately because very many people on the journey, whatever journey they're taking, often exclude their family members. It could be children excluding their parents or spouses. And what you're saying is so vital because part of the journey is not just about your own self-actualization. It's also about enhancing your love, enhancing your giving. When I find, and I counsel people all the time, and someone tells me they're on a journey and it's alienating their family, I say, how could you be getting closer to God and closer to soul, and that should alienate? That's like a contradiction of terms. It should make you closer to others. Why is it that you're not able to convey to them the beauty of who you are? Why are they seeing you more selfish in a way, or exclusionary? And it's vital because that's part of the journey. The people that are close to you in your family. It's not just about you. It's about. It should always lead to more love, more compassion, more sensitivity, never the other way. Whenever I see anybody embracing a spiritual journey that, in a sense, makes them more, I don't want to say obnoxious, but more or less sensitive, there's always a big problem with that. And that's really why.
Can I just, I don't know if we have a couple of moments, but this point I think really touches me personally. Because yes, with my husband, we reached a very, I guess, and we reached an understanding, but I have to say that for our families, this was new and this was different. And I think for parts of our families, it was even a bit scary. And they weren't sure where things are going. And I just want to really...
No one was concerned that you're going off the deep end?
Yes, they were very concerned that I'm not going to eat at their house anymore and that I'm going to become this daughter that they can't recognize. And what you're saying is very, 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 very important. From the very beginning, it was very clear to me that I am the same person that I was before. I'm the daughter of my parents. For me, respecting my parents, I don't know why I'm feeling emotional now, and thanking me for thanking them for taking me on the journey, even though maybe mistakes were made. It's okay. I make mistakes as a mother as well. And at no point of the journey have I ever considered becoming someone that my wider family can't engage with. And if anything, we try to bring joy through this journey. My mother started lighting Shabbat candles at the age of 70.
Wow.
We're celebrating this, and whatever she does after, it's her own business. So yeah, always look for that something that could be beautiful, that could be meaningful, that could be connecting, rather than if you don't have that cutlery, I can't come from Pesach. No,
Right,
I will
exactly.
stand my parents because they're my parents and their most important thing.
Well, it's touching me also deeply because so much of, unfortunately, religion and other such is often experienced in a dogmatic way. I'm holier than thou, as you said. I can't do this because you're like less. It is all about ahava, v'ahavta l'recha kamocha, love. The connection with God can never be at the expense of love. If it's at the expense of love, it's not God. It's your own self-worship in some way. And it's very touching to me because when I hear your story, even though we know each other, but something just elicited in me the feeling that you, in a way, this last 7-8 years, your journey, well, your whole life journey, in a way, you're like taking thousands of years of history of your own lineage that goes back, who knows how far back, all the way to the beginning of time. And you made that shift that has only made more love and more connection, and not, God forbid, started a new path, but really aligned everything. It's like what we call a tikkun, a repair. And when I think of it, it's like, my good friend Michal, who I just know on a personal level, has done something quite cosmic and quite historical, So
Wow.
I wanted to just, I don't know if I ever shared that with you, but I felt when you were saying your parents and the way your mother starts lighting candles, her grandmother lit candles, so it's realigning things, and not because we are better, whatever the reasons, the bizarre twists and turns of life no one could understand, the Holocaust you mentioned. I mean, who of us, every one of us, if you look at our trajectory through the generations, went through crazy times and horrible times and pogroms, and of course the Holocaust, and before that the Crusades. I mean, and here we are. And Michal, you have done, you've written a chapter that so-called aligns the narrative. Let's put it that way. And I just want to.
That's fair. I wish my mom was here to listen, but I'm going to share the recording with her.
Absolutely. We could talk on and on and on, and I definitely look forward to have more conversations with you. I feel like it's part of our conversation we would have without anyone listening in, but it's an honor to share it with others. I hope you feel the same way.
It's my honor.
And I really, there's so much to touch upon. I have a lot of questions, trust me, a lot of questions, because I like it to be real. It's not just a fairy tale of, I was in a bad place and I found utopia. It's life is a journey, and there's twists and turns, and I think you're a tremendous living example in the modern world, in the contemporary life, in technology, everything you're going through, and a beacon of light. I really think it's tremendously powerful to find that, because there's so many out there, people who are very successful, but they're looking for their soul and they need it. So here you are, Michal. You're pioneering a path that's so necessary today.
Thank you so much. I think any more compliments and I'll faint. So thank you.
That may cause this video to go viral, actually. You actually faint.
Thank you, Rabbi Jacobson, and thank you
Michal,
for being
great. Thank you for making the time. I encourage you all. Michal's new book, What Would You Do If You Weren't Afraid? You can get it at meaningfullife.com/shop. And where all fine books are to be found. Michal, continue your great example, both success in your professional life and your personal life. in your spiritual life, the Jewish wisdom life, and continue inspiring so many people, including myself. I really thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Much, much appreciated. Thank you, Rabbi Jacobson, and everyone listening today. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Be well. Thank you. God bless you all.